In this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to do the open shell stitch. So it's very similar to the shell stitch where you have your little shell of trebles, and with the original shell stitch you would work the next row, you would have shells in here. In this open shell stitch we just have a space here, we have the open space in between. Lovely repeated 2-row pattern, which means it's going to look slightly different on the back. So that's the front, but I think equally the back looks lovely as well, and you get more of the raised part of the shell on the back. Hello, my name's Karen Stangram and welcome to Conquer Crochet, the channel for tips, tricks and techniques for conquering your crochet. Everything I talk about in today's video will be linked in the descriptions below. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss a single stitch. So if you're keen to get going with this video, give me a thumbs up and let's do this. So for this tutorial I'm going to be using a double knit yarn. This is a sheepy's yarn. You can use any yarn that you would like to use. I'm going to be using a needle to sew in my ends and scissors for cutting off my ends. And although it's a double knit yarn and I would use a 4mm hook ordinarily, I'm going to use a 4.5mm hook. The bigger the hook size you use, the more lacy your pattern's going to become. So if you want something very lacy, you could go up a hook, a whole size, maybe even 2 whole sizes more than the recommended. I'm just going to go up half a size, which is what I did on this pattern here. So you still get that nice lacy drape, but it doesn't feel as tight as it might do with a 4 rather than a 4.5. So we're going to start off with a slip knot. You can do this in whichever way you prefer. And we're going to make a foundation chain, and our foundation chain needs to be made in multiples of 6 and then 2 extras on the ends. So for this sample I'm going to chain 30 because I think it's quite a nice size if you're wanting to make a scarf. If you're wanting to do the sample with me, you can follow along with 30, or you can make as many chains as you would like to, depending if you're doing a pattern or if you're just doing a swatch. So I'm going to chain 30, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So pause the video now whilst you make your foundation chain in multiples of 6. So I've made my foundation chain in multiples of 6 and I've gone up to 30. We're now going to do 2 extras as our turning chains. And then we're ready to start row 1. Now row 1 starts with a double crochet. That's UK terminology. In US terminology that would be a single crochet. So I'm going to do a double crochet in the second chain from the hook. So I'm not going to count the one on the hook. So 1, 2, insert my hook, yarn over, pull through, got 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through those 2 loops. We're then going to miss the next 2 stitches, the next 2 chains, so 1, 2, and in the next chain we're going to do 5 treble stitches all in the same chain. So this is making our shell. So yarn over, insert into 1, 2, we've skipped into the third one, yarn over, pull through, you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, so that's 1, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, so that's 2, and 3, 4, and 5. So that's our first shell done. We're going to skip the next 2 chains, 1, 2, and we're going to put a double crochet in the third one. And that's essentially the pattern all the way along the row. So we start again and we're going to miss the next 2 chains, so 1, 2, and we're going to make 5 trebles in the next chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Skip 2 chains, 1, 1, 2, and do a double crochet in the next one. Skip 2 chains, 1, 2, and do your shell stitch. So that's 5 trebles all in the same chain. And we're just going to continue this pattern all the way down this row with our shell stitch, skipping 2, double crochet in the next, skip 2, shell stitch all the way down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's our pattern as we go down the row. So pause the video now whilst you create the rest of this row, and I will see you at the end. So I've just done my last shell and I've got 3 chains left, so we skip 2 and the very last stitch should be a double crochet in that last chain. And then just tighten up your tail, and there we have the first row of shells. So from now on, rows 2 and rows 3 are going to be repeated until you have the length of the work that you want. So for row 2 then, this is the row I think we should finish on. So repeat rows 2 and 3 and then finish on a row 2 just so you get that nice chained edge. So we're going to chain 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and turn your work. You can turn and chain if you prefer. I'm then going to count these 5 chains as a treble. So the first 2 are going to be a treble and the next 2 are going to be 2 chains. We're going to be working into the top of the shell. So we've got 5 trebles here and we're going to be working in the third one. So 1, 2, 3. So the top, the peak of that shell, we're going to do a double crochet. We're then going to chain 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing. So in the top of the shell here, so 1, 2, 3, we're going to do a double crochet. This is probably the quickest row out of all of them. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then double crochet in that third treble of the next shell. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, and double crochet in the third treble of the next shell. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and double crochet in the peak of the next shell. So if you have a longer sample than me, you might want to pause the video now whilst you complete the rest of your chain 5s and your double crochets in the peak of the shell, and come back and I'll show you how to finish off at the end. So at the end here we're going to do, we've sort of got a half shell and we need a sort of a half of this part of the pattern. So we're going to just chain 2 this time. So 1, 2, and then we're going to do a treble into that final double crochet here. So these are all parts of the shell and this was the double crochet from the previous row. So I'm going in with the treble, and that just helps us to keep our height. So for row 3 then we're going to chain 1 and turn, and our chain 1 does not count as a stitch, therefore we're going to work into this very first gap here, okay, so into the top of the treble we just made, and into that treble we're going to do a double crochet. We're then going to do 5 trebles in the next double crochet, so we're ignoring all these chain spaces. Remember, this is the open work version. We would have been working into this gap here had we been doing a normal shell stitch. So we're going to be working into this double crochet here with another shell. So yarn over and make your treble, and we're going to do 5 all in that same double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Oops, forgot to yarn over. And 5. So we have our trebles all in that double crochet there. Into the loop here, we're just going to do a double crochet, so around this 5 chain here. So you insert, yarn over, pull around that chain, yarn over and pull through 2, and that just helps us to anchor these stitches here and to travel across to the next double crochet. And then we're going to do 5 trebles into the next double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then we're going to double crochet into that 5 chain space. So continue all the way down your row with your 5 trebles into the double crochet above your previous shell, and then a double crochet into the 5 chain space, and I'll meet you at the end to show you how to finish off the row. So I've come to the end of my row and I've done my last shell, and what we're going to do now is do the double crochet not over the 5 chains here, because that will give us a wonky edge. And we're going to double crochet into the 3rd chain. So this is the 5 chain that we had for turning. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go into that chain. I'm going to try and go into that chain, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's our 2nd shell row. But that's the 1st shell row of the repeated pattern. So it's a chain row, a shell row, a chain row, a shell row, all the way through. And as I said before, I recommend ending on the chain row. So then we go back to row 2, which would be chaining 5, turn your work, and then we're going to do a double crochet in that 3rd treble from the shell. Chain 5, and double crochet in the 3rd chain of the shell, the 3rd treble of the shell. So we're just going to repeat that row 2 and row 3 pattern all the way through your work. So I'm just going to work up a few more rows now for you to see how it looks, and I will see you in a second. So I've just done a few more rows for you to see how the pattern works up. We've ended here on the chain row, which I think makes sense so that you can actually have a final row rather than a bobbly row. It's nice and straight. If you're wanting to put edging on, that's going to be much easier to end on that row there. As I said before, it looks slightly different on the back, but equally as beautiful. In fact, I think I sometimes prefer the back because you get that more sort of raised bobbly look. So really nice one for scarves, shawls, something for spring or summer. You've got that lovely drape in the fabric, so it's not a stiff fabric. So it's a really nice one for lightweight items. I really hope you found today's tutorial useful. If there are any information that you need to find out about this video, have a look in the descriptions below where I post all the links to any freebies and other videos I think you might find useful. Don't forget, if you have enjoyed this video, to give me a thumbs up below. Don't forget also to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you've enjoyed it and you'd like to see more of my tutorial videos. There are 2 other videos on screen to help you on your crochet journey, and I will see you over there. Thank you so much for joining me on this one, and happy hooking!